Assistant Professor Viper ATP. Today I am here to introduce our speaker Dr. Hitesh Barucha sir, Associate Director, Real World Evidence, Health Economics and Outcome Research, Yavarasana, Asia Pacific. Hitesh Bhupendra Barucha sir is an accomplished clinical research and medical affairs professional with 15 years of progressive experience in leading phase 2 to phase 4 clinical trials and real-world evidence studies. Sir expertise spans a wide range of therapeutic areas including oncology, diabetes, immunology, inflammatory bowel disease, rare bleeding disorders, and precision diagnostics. With a solid foundation in pharmaceutical sciences and career shaped by hands-on experience in both global and domestic settings, Sir has played a pivotal role in execution and diversity of complex clinical research projects across India, Asia, Pacific, and the European Union. Currently, Sir is serving as an Associate Director, Real World Evidence, Health Economic and Outcome Research at Yavarasana, India Private Limited. Sir provides a strategic oversight and project leadership for real world and health economic studies for global pharmaceutical clients. In this role, Sir is responsible for project planning, regulatory submission support, stakeholder engagement, team development, and the implementation of innovative clinical strategies. Sir has previously held senior roles in leading organizations such as Novartis, Forecast Biosciences, Formax Market Access, Quintiles Technologies, and RWE India, contributing to medical affairs, regulatory affairs, and clinical operations. Sir is known for his strategic thinking, team leadership, and cross-functional collaboration. Sir has been recognized with multiple awards for contributions to clinical trial execution, regulatory submission, and operational excellence. In addition to the authorized several publications and posters on topics such as digital health interventions, retrospective charts, audits, and decentralized clinical trials. With a passion for clinical innovation and dedication to improving patients' outcomes, Sir continues to contribute meaningfully to the advancement of clinical research and healthcare delivery. With this introduction, I would like to invite Dr. Hitesh Barucha sir to start the session. Sir.
Hi, good afternoon everyone. I hope I am audible. Audible? Last I think you are there. You can come here or no problem. So I hope you had a good I hope you had a good lunch, and my duty is that you don't fall asleep. So I hope you will also be interactive and as active as I am and help me that I don't fall asleep. Okay. So a lot of introduction given to me. I am also not aware that I have done so much of work, but I mean it's still feeling very nostalgic here. Coming back to college, it's been a long time. Last what I have seen my college was in 2005. After that I've been working in office and you are setting up the stage for people to get seated. One light, I think there you put the last if you put the light on. Here I think this will be a reflection, so they will not be able to see the slide. This if you can turn it off, one light you can turn it off. You can see or there is a reflection on the slide. Okay, thank you. So I'll be covering an interesting topic here, importance of real-world evidence and its role in advancing scientific research and evidence-based medicine. Now, I think you all are like first year, second year pharmacy, or how it is? Mix of scope into this industry, and you can dwell in, make your career as well if you are interested. India as well as global both. Global already are advancing. India is catching up the stage. Importance of RWE, this RCT is nothing but randomized clinical trial, and RWE is real world evidence. We will go into the specifics of it, and significance and application of real world evidence, then the role of RWE in the future, how it holds, and then case studies. Because we've been doing certain studies and I got the opportunity to work on certain projects. So we'll also have a look on that. Next slide, please. Well, so as I said that why do you require to have research done, right? So we need the drug in the market. We do drug discovery, and once the drug is happen to come as a safe molecule or a safe product, then it is marketed. But what happens after that? What happens once the drug is marketed? Do the pharma companies bother to do any record checking or post-marketing surveillance? Does doctor work on the drug and report certain kind of outcomes or maybe not the labeled events? And what about the hospitals and patients? Do they report any kind of non-conformity or any kind of quality issues when it comes to that? And that all is being spoken, talked and discussed, decided through real world evidence. So the second paragraph what you read is the gist of real world evidence, why it is important, because it gives a deep insights. Sometimes you can find data of the same drug that no one comes to know about it, and then you understand that there is an abbreviated drug information which is hidden. The best example case is, if you have to say, Wegovy. I don't know if people have heard about a diabetic insulin which is used for type 2 diabetes, is used for weight management, right? Novo Nordisk, Eli Lilly are fighting against that, Ozempic and Wegovy. Semaglutide is the name of the insulin. It was given for type 2 diabetes, but now it has got hold of the celebrity status across Bollywood, and it is taken for weight loss management, right? So that is through real world evidence and data generation, where insights were taken from the scientific people, statistical people, and then it was used in a different setting, that the same drug is used for lowering or helping weight loss for young adults or other patients. And then of course it is all the stakeholders are involved. It is not the pharma company or doctors. It is you and me who are consuming the drug have to report certain things back to the doctor, and doctor will report it back to the sponsor. Sponsor is pharma company, so that the data is circulated. Next slide please. Right. So now when we talk about randomized clinical trial, so anyone would like to just provide a small gist? Anyone wants to take that up? What is randomized clinical trial? Anyone would like to just answer, or chorus? Just trying to keep yourself awake and me as well. Anyone understanding what is clinical trial and what is randomized clinical trial? Okay. So clinical trial is basically you are testing any kind of compound, any kind of drug or any kind of investigation on human beings. So phase 1 will have healthy volunteers, phase 2 and phase 3 and phase 4. These are the phases where this is done. Now every clinical trial has a specific protocol, and you have to follow that protocol. Protocol is bit stringent because you need to have the inclusion criteria and the exclusion criteria. And clinical trials are done in a simulated environment. So you cannot take certain kind of patients, you cannot test the drug on pregnant women, you cannot get pregnant during the clinical trial if any subject is participating, you cannot have specific kind of drugs if you are participating in a clinical trial. And then way in and way forth, there are exclusion criteria. You cannot take CNS patients during that time in the clinical trial. You cannot take certain class of patients who are hypertensive or high diabetic or having any high level kidney disorders and all, liver disorders. So it is very simulated environment, and we get the data in that simulated environment. Okay. So these are certain drawbacks of clinical trial which are put here. And randomized is something where we define a group. So say X group is taking drug A and Y group is taking drug B, and when we compare, okay. So this is all about randomized clinical trial. Next slide, sir. Right. So now whatever data is there, it is specific to certain class of patients, and these patients will only provide us the data. But the real scenarios which are happening, which is after the drug is getting into the market, you come to know what is happening in older population, what is happening to the cardiac patient, because same drug is given to everyone, like a larger population, and that is where the beauty of real world comes in. So you get a lot of data in the real world scenario and the routine practice, because those kind of patients or classifications were not there in the actual protocol or randomized clinical trial. And that is why real world evidence and data plays an important role in understanding what is happening to the drug and the patient once the drug is marketed. Okay. Exactly. Right. Next slide. You can press. So we'll understand terminologies which are there. So what is real world data? So real world data is nothing but data which is coming from the patients. Okay, apart from the clinical trials, with this kind of data is coming from the patients. Say today I go for a doctor checkup, I do my blood report, and I come to know that my cholesterol is high, I have certain issues with regards to my blood pressure, and I'm getting weak, my bones are getting weaker. So all that data gets captured in the doctor's record, and when the doctor's record is being analyzed for certain kind of projects, that data can be taken up as real world data, because that is happening in the real world scenario, right? So it can be throughout patients, oncology, diabetology, in pregnant cases, in elderly class population, for surgical population, everywhere, whenever you get. Also certain data which are coming through claims. Claims is nothing but if I undergo any kind of surgery or any kind of hospitalization, my data is being taken up by the insurance company, and they evaluate that data, and then the data is being recorded for my medical insurances. So that data also solves a lot of it gives them a lot of insights when you do real world evidence. So all these data, whenever it comes from the patient, it can be survey also, simple survey on say any kind of weight loss or maybe exercise. So when you go to the gym or when you are exercising, then survey is taken that after doing this kind of exercise for 21 days, what are the differences you find, right? When you see certain ads, like पहले तो मैं ऐसा था, अभी मैं ऐसा हो गया, right? Weight loss, lot of ads comes in, right? After, before picture and all. That all also serves as real world evidence or real world data. Okay, now coming to real world insights. Insights is nothing but when you start analyzing this real world data, you will get real world insights, right? X-ray reports of patient who are taking certain kind of medications or some kind of development they have, and then that reports are taken up at 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. Then what kind of data you get from that? Certain kind of scans if you do, some lab reports you do. All these when they are analyzed in a statistical way or in an analytical method, then these become real world insights. And what is real world evidence? Evidence is nothing but the data and insights clubbed together provides an evidence, right? As I said that Ozempic or Wegovy, when semaglutide was given for diabetes, but they found that there is weight loss also happening, right? So that is a very, very exciting and very accurate example of real world evidence, how it helps in identifying certain kind of drugs which has a different therapeutic indications or newer abbreviated indication which you can find. Right. Now looking at, you must have seen the normal funnel, right? The drug discovery funnel, that any drug or any class of drug which is found, then it goes through certain kind of synthesis or a certain kind of pathways, say BRAF, KRAF pathway or TKI pathway, any kind of serotonin uptake inhibitor, those kind of pathways. Now when it comes down, then you do preclinical. Preclinical you find what is the maximum tolerated dose, what is the single accelerated dose, what are MAD, what are SAD, then toxicity, and then you come on the phase 1. So only once you have a definite data in preclinical, when animal studies are done, you come down to clinical phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, everything happens, and then the drug is approved. But here I am looking at the funnel in the horizontal way. So we had clinical studies done. So clinical studies, RCTs, as I said, they are a very simulated environment, but you get very specific patients data. When you go broader, you can find variances in the drug usage, And then you have variances in population characteristics, because clinical trial will have a very specific population. You cannot take all the patients, you cannot take all type of medications in that. And then everything combined together in the real world, you will get the outcomes which are long term effectiveness, right? In post marketing or post authorization studies which we do. So this is the difference between RWE and RCT. Now we understood that, moreover you can get a gist of that, but what are the sources of real world evidence? As I said, multiple sources here, anything and everything related to your drug or any device. Nowadays a lot of wearable devices are there, so that data is also captured, and we monitor that as well. Analysis is done on that. A lot of wearable devices are there. So wearable devices data, your mortality data from the hospital, then hospital data, claims data, EMR, EHR is electronic health records which are there in the hospital. So if I get admitted and I get discharged, my data is stored in the records of hospital. So that data also serves as real world data. And it provides evidence if you do analysis. Registries, long-term registries are done in diabetes, in cardiac. Diabetes drug giving a cardiac outcome, or cardiac drug giving chronic kidney disorders. So these kind of variations are put in, and efforts have to be taken in putting up the method, right? Data is there, but how do you try and analyze it so that you get your answer? That is where when scientific intelligence and statistician comes together and they decide the analysis method. Okay, so these are various sources of real world data from where you can get. Right. So we understood what is real world terminologies, we understood what are RCTs versus RWEs, we understood from where the real world data and evidences can be generated, the source. Now let us look at the insights, the significance and application. Now where all this can be used. Okay. So significance of real world evidence. So real world applicability. So herein what I said, that once you get the data from different sources, it becomes applicable in various forms. It can be for certain laboratory finding, it can be for certain kind of new drug discovery or everyday discovery, it can be for either understanding the adverse events or safety profiling. So there where this real world applicability will come in. Informed decision making. So it helps the stakeholders to take informed decision. So what my drug, if I am giving at 50 microgram for one day, what is happening? Then if I give the same drug for twice in a day, what is happening? If I titrate the dose, lower the dose, then what is the outcome which is coming? Are the patients safe, or they are not safe? Also, at every analysis, what happens is you understand the cost associated with it. Say, I say that 20 rupees paracetamol if I take for 4 days, and then versus if I higher the dose or lower the dose, is the efficacy and effectiveness same? Will there be any changes to the cost? So that also you get it from real world. Okay, so there is health economic outcome research, which is part of the theme for SPOR as well, where we are attending right now. So health economics also plays a lot of role. Through RWE and RWD, you get the economics of any health indicators and burden of disease on the cost and other things. Patient-centric insights. So patient-centric, what patients are feeling. how patients are behaving. So say if cancer patient is going through a lot of trauma, the patient has to undergo any kind of cytotoxic agents, right? Chemotherapy is given. Then what undergoes to that patient? How they are feeling? Sickle cell disease or any kind of rare bleeding disorders. How they are hemophilia, if I have to say. They have to go for blood transfusions. How patients are getting into it. How their psychology treats it. So that all data is also captured here. Your mental stability, instability, you can get it through real world data. So the applicability is very high. Next is on the healthcare utilization cost. This is where the main thing comes, where the patient, provider, and the insurer. So all these, when kept together, you can get a lot of insights. And there are ways where I think prior sessions had taken, where health technology assessment plays an important role in defining if the drug has to be put at what cost, or it has to be provided free of cost, or there should be any kind of a price capping to be done, because the burden of disease is so high that patients cannot afford it on a long term, right? If it is a chronic ailment or something. So it has to go in a way where all are benefited, and in a way that the drug is giving that kind of response to the patient on long term with being very economical. So this also gives a lot of insight. Post-marketing surveillance, as I said, any given drug in the market, in India, we see that post-marketing surveillance, it happens, but not to that expectation or kind of a finding. So patient do not report if they say they pop a pill, any kind of medication they take, and after taking that medication they find that they are feeling nauseated, or there is vomiting, or they find suddenly there is a fever, or there is weight loss, or palpitation increases, anxiety increases. Then these are sometimes not reported to the doctor. What they do is they stop the drug, right? The drug is stopped and the doctor is also stopped. So that is a roadblock. That should not be a roadblock. You should report. Patient has to report to the doctor, and doctor's responsibility is to report to the pharma company. And that is how the chain will happen, and the data will be given, right? How we know that nimesulide is now banned, right? You all must be knowing that nimesulide is banned. Why? Because there are so many implications of nimesulide. Thalidomide incident which happened long back. All these should be reported so that you come to know that the drug may be tested in a simulated environment in clinical trial, but it is not worthy of taking it in a larger population. This is what we understand when we do these kind of analytics and we do the insights from real world data. Okay. Then adapting to evolving healthcare landscape, of course. So whatever is happening now, adapting and evolving is in which way? Wearable devices. You have smartphones, you have smartwatches, right? How much time you are spending, how your searches on Amazon and Flipkart gives you an idea to Flipkart that someone is so much interested in buying certain kind of nail polish or certain kind of product or footwear, and you will keep getting those ads in front of you, right? Every time you try and punch in, suddenly you will say how come Google came to know that I want footwear, or I want green t-shirt, or whatever. So similarly in this also, when you wear these devices, the data is pulled in the cloud server, and there are certain regulatory approvals which are taken, and we try and get that data. So what is happening to your sleep pattern, what is happening to your daily intake of steps, what is that, how many steps you take on an average in a year, then how they are converted into factors which drive your heartbeat, your normalcy in your part, and screen timing, how much attentive you are in any given lecture, and you're not missing on the phone. So these all data will give a lot of insights when it comes to. And then of course the final thing is accelerating innovation. So through complete stakeholder cycle and data collection, you can try and get certain innovations or an idea when you adopt and accelerate the innovation in different ways. So different therapeutic models, different kind of activities are performed when this real world data and the insights come through. Right, now this how RWE, real world evidence, will support conduct of randomized clinical trial. See, every time a clinical trial will not give you success. There are multiple failures for one clinical trial or randomized clinical trial to succeed, and there is a lot of resources and money goes into it. Right? It is not a simple trial that we start today and it ends tomorrow or maybe in 6 months. It goes for 2 years, 3 years. Global data is also collected, India data is also collected, and then it is given. But through RWE, what you can do is you can control the overall arms, synthetic arms. At times you don't get the patient, so statistical data is put and a dummy piece is set to understand how it acts with very few population. And historical data is a traditional data, so anything which is there in older studies or older data, that is put and then they are tested. So I think it helps in that, in lowering the study cost. By the time is reduced, cost is reduced, and it fosters the and accelerates the drug marketing. So it gives closer to giving the approval or chances of having the drug being successful. And it supports the evaluation feasibility. So right patient, right class of medicine, right class of doctors, right hypothesis is set to design and devise a randomized clinical trial. So real world data will help and support and lower the cost in driving the clinical trial. Similarly, how it will help in doing drug approval. So different stages. So if from real world data, if you can get safety information, you don't need to get further reporting done to the health authority. You can have an abbreviated report presented. Fulfilling post-approval study. So if you are already collecting certain data, it will fulfill the requirement of doing any post-marketing surveillance. And then of course provide clinical relevant information, and this also reduces time, efforts, and doing any kind of randomized clinical trial. So applicability is both in designing any randomized trial and also taking the drug approval faster in the given conditions. Now we understood what kind of insights it can lead to and transform that, and we will look into the role of RWE in future of scientific research. So how? So as I said, digitization and innovation technology. With lot of digitization happening, if this data is collected in a proper way, systematic way, there is leaps and bounds of methods which can be applied, and that data can be useful in multiple ways, which I just mentioned. Better design and conduct of clinical trial. We just saw that it supports designing proper hypothesis and gives an insights of what exactly can be done, right? A lot of algorithm and machine learning can be developed through putting up this data, so that we get good information of particular class of drug or a pathway if we are trying to create any inhibitors. And finally, new analytical capabilities. So there are multiple traditional way of doing certain analysis, but with real world data you can combine statistical pieces with different analysis model, and you can come up with economical outcome research, plus you can get some newer insights in that data sets. Yes, so the potential uses, and these are very endless. So in clinical development, it gives on a targeted population, and it helps in optimization of that data. For medical affairs, all the doctors, if they start collecting it in a better way, and we put some kind of method to this kind of madness, then from doctors also we can have lot of information, because that is where the patient are coming and the drug is being prescribed by the doctor. Right? You and me cannot take any drug, it is prescribed by the doctor. So that also it helps. Market research, so it is for the pharma company. So they come to know the burden of the disease, the cost, and it demonstrates the overall value, how you can hit in the product life cycle. Right? And then of course the external affairs, so talking to the regulatory bodies, how important my data sets are. So when you go and talk with the regulatory body, they also understand that these kind of drugs are required or not required or have to be stopped. So that helps in terms of optimizing it. And then commercial, of course, everything leads to certain kind of commercial angle. So real world data will save a lot of cost and give a kind of a commercial value to any kind of patient. So any cost which is reduced will directly have impact on the MRP, and you and me have to have lesser purchase capacity in that. So the valuation is set in such a way. Right, so how real world evidence is a game changer. So as I said, pharma institution, HCP institution is hospital, healthcare practitioners are there. They can do it, patients and regulators, they all combine and they do the overall value. Clinical development, pre-launching, during the launch, and then newer indication and post-marketing requirements when it comes to newer drugs and classification. Opportunities for pharma as a pre-launch. So at pre-launch they can check the prevalence from the data, they can prescribing patterns can be checked through the doctors when they are doing, and then unmet medical need is set when they have to check at that. At launch, regulatory bodies have to check on that, and at post-launch the compliance and treatment subgroups are checked and assessed. When it goes to patient, next is institution HCP, same policies also apply here. So the gap between any kind of treatment to the drug and the way the drug is acting to the patient, these are analyzed at the hospital level. So the data capturing becomes very important when it comes to the HCP and institution level. And multiple opportunities are there for hospitals to capture the data, leverage pharma along with the institute and doctors to generate valuable insights. Patients, of course, patient, as I said, it is a prime duty of any patient to report any kind of adversities which are happening by taking the drug. So that is very important. Also, it sets an example that how patients contribute to real world. So it is by providing the data, by talking with the consultant, the HCP, and give the data to them so that they can take it up further. These are certain regulatory scenarios where real world evidence has made a major impact. So if you see FDA and EMA, that is European Union, have traditionally used the post-marketing safety data, and they have understood the benefits and risks of certain class of drugs, and they have made it kind of guidelines that real world can be supported for regulatory outcomes. FDA has also announced that real world evidence will be a key enabler in providing or taking the drug decisions and drug approvals. And EME, of course, has come out with a kind of a regulatory science which in 2025 will give an idea that these guidelines, when made acceptable, then the drug approval and drug discovery will have a lot of benefit. So regulatory bodies are also taking that effort in understanding what is the importance of evidence and evidence-based research. So, well, we talk a lot about this. Are this really being practiced? So yes, these are being practiced. You can see on the slide now what is presented, the table. So you have, most of them are monoclonal antibodies, MABs, MAB, and most of the research in real world evidence is around oncology because it gives long-term data. So you see here avelumab is one of the class of oncological drug which is used in urothelial cancer and some other cancers, and the EHR data, when it gave a control efficacy and it helped in giving the marketing approval. So that is the power of real world evidence data. When it is submitted, it really helps. And this was done in 2017, right? We are talking now in India, and it's been now last 3 years, 4 years that real world evidence and data is getting accepted. But in US and EU, it has already been taken up a decade back. Same is pembrolizumab. Pembrolizumab is a program that ligand 1 inhibitor. It is also a cancer in lung cancer and some other cancers. Again, expanded access studies, and the data, when it was supplemented, the approval was given on certain class of indications on those grounds. Lutetium 177, it's a radioactive isotope. It is used in a very niche way, but the real world data was accepted for this kind of class of genre and drug as well. Blinatumomab is also immunotherapy. It is given for rare diseases and cancer. It was also accepted as a supplementary data which was submitted and approval was being taken. And selinexor also initially there was rejected, but this data proved that there is an efficacy control for multiple myeloma and it got accepted. So these are certain case studies. I've been having that opportunity while working with Eversena to work with. So these are some studies which I have done as a project lead, and happy to share as a case study with you all. So this is nothing but a wearable device or an app, how it regulates and functions diabetes management. So we had a specific app which is called as My Sugar app, and there was AccuCheck. The data was tested on both how the data coming into the wearable device like My Sugar application, and it goes and signals the doctor, diabetologist, for hypo and hyper events in diabetes. And the data is now under publication. So this is one of kind of a prospective clinical research which was done in real world evidence. And this is a second case study. It was an RH negative. So you know that there are certain issues when it comes to RH factor in pregnancy cases. So here in 3,000 sites and 20,000 data of patients were taken in real-time scenario, and it was being collated, compiled, and a wonderful research had come out where we wanted to see that what is the retrospective and prospective data of taking RH drugs has an impact on the management of RH negative pregnancy. So it was more of a surveil thing, very simple, but it had lasted for more than 2 years, and we could have a wonderful data coming from them. So these are case studies. I think my presentation ends here and it's open for discussion. And, yeah. My last slide. I hope you had good insights and some food for thought in real world evidence. So any questions, anything not specific to the topic but in class of clinical trial, clinical research, real world evidence, please feel free to ask. We can use some time. Any other section? And maybe we can take it down here today and maybe tomorrow as well. We can take that question. Thank you.
Now the session is open for queries. Dear students, do you have any queries? Please you can ask.
Already you discussed about RCT and RWE. How can we connect both RCT and RWE, sir? As there is a little bit confusion. First of all, we should. After completion of RCT, should we check about RWE, or after collecting the RWE data, then we do the RCT, sir?
So, good question. So, see, what happens is for RWE to be done, you need to have certain data for that kind of class of drug in that particular patient. So, we should understand that there should be at least a first generation or a second generation kind of drugs which are already available in certain population, and that drugs are marketed and widely taken. And we have ample of data to understand the insights and evidence. Right? We need to have that insights and evidence together so that we can do. Now, if we already have that kind of example, then you can evaluate that data based on what kind of RCT you are planning. So, if you are planning RCT, then that data will be useful in understanding the safety events or defining your patient population or making up the hypothesis. Right? For RCT to come, you need to have two groups. Randomization happens. So, you need to have two groups. Or maybe within that group you need to have stratification. So when you are designing it, it helps. If there is no, if it is completely NC, new chemical entity, then of course you cannot do any kind of real world evidence on the drug, but you can do on population, right? Because population is there. Drug information is not there because your RCT is for new. So you can do on population, you can understand what is the prevalence of that kind of disease, what is the disease burden, will you get that kind of patients or not, and can you define in specific way. So the conduct slide which you just saw, like the synthetic arm and the historical arm, you can develop that through RWE in the cases where the data is already not there. Like, you don't have that. So it can be useful in both the ways.
Thank you. Any other queries? Thank you, sir, for sharing your valuable information. The session is really informative on the role and importance of real-world evidence and real-world data which is coming from the patients, real-world insight and real-world evidence, data sources from RWE, significance of RWE and the potential uses of real-world evidence, etc. Thank you so much for sharing your valuable insights. Thank you, sir. Dear students, please stay here only. We will start another session also here only. Dear students, please stay here only. Don't go outside.